Hi, everybody. Good morning and welcome to the Wisdom House and the Litchfield Farmers Forum. This is a pretty beautiful morning and an absolutely beautiful space to be in. We're grateful to have this time to be together and be able to hear some feedback today and find out a little bit more about what's been the directives and the direction we've been going with farming nearby. I'd like to welcome everybody through Zoom. Hello, Zoomers. I hope you can hear me okay. We were running through some audio this morning. We might have a few bumps in the road with that, but we'll absolutely do our best. So my name is Amy Dyer, and what I want to do is just give a little bit of technology, kind of a few things to say and support, especially for those of you who are Zooming in. On your chat window, everybody came through on the image of yourself as automatically muted. And when you're automatically muted, in the left-hand corner, once you hover over your name, there's an ability to unmute. But because of feedback, it's best to keep yourself unmuted unless we've got a question. There's also a spot where you can raise your hand. And when you raise your hand, we've got Jillian here who's able to help us monitor that and be able to respond to your question. And there's also a chat bar in there. And in the chat bar, we're going to be monitoring that. There'll be a good chance that we're going to be needing to repeat questions that come through chat so that everybody in the audience can hear, as well as Joan can hear the question. And we're going through audio so that everybody online can hear us. Otherwise, it would be hard to Zoom into one little computer for everybody to hear the whole room. Okay. Any questions before we begin? Okay. So in general, I wanted to just kind of go through a little bit about what actually brought us here today. I'm here with Harvey Hubble at Chanticleer Acres, and we've got other support people here as well from Chanticleer Acres. We've got Stephen. We've got a lot of partners here who work with us in various ways. We've got Jillian, Kelly, we've got our crew here also filming, and we've got Joan from the Connecticut Farm Bureau, and I'll introduce you more formally in a moment. So before COVID, actually last fall, we had wanted to start teaching some classes, and we were setting our sights towards saying, you know what, the farming community is really important and you know, a major anchor in our food source. We just want to buy from Stop and Shop, and you know, we like to be able to go to farmers markets and go to farm stands, but let's also try to learn a little bit about doing a better job with how we are stewards of our land. And you know, there are many great resources out there, really, you know, well-known instructors and teachers and experts who are right in our backyards. And even among ourselves, we have some experts that we wanted to be able to tap into. And we did successfully run one class in the fall about indigenous microorganisms and Korean natural farming. Upon the heels of that, we said, okay, let's have a mushroom class and do mushroom inoculations. Let's, you know, utilize our experts nearby. That would be a wonderful class to learn. Let's try to plan some other things for the future related to micro-indigenous organisms, you know, no-till farming, a variety of different classes. And so we went to the town to get permission to do that, and we realized we didn't really have the right regulations to be able to allow us to just have people on the property and teach those classes. So we scheduled for a hearing, and we had put in for a special exception. And the category was philanthropic, institutional educational instruction, along those lines. Anyway, it's called PI, basically. And when we ended up in that one category, because education fell under that, it ended up kind of being a little bit of a long route to get us to several hearings because we had COVID. And the good news was, in the end, although we were denied, we learned that the regulations needed to be revisited, and the town was very interested in doing that. So that made us think, oh my gosh, well, you know, understanding that we're going to be revisiting the regulations, what sort of feedback should we get and how do we do this? And it led us to the path of a great phone call with Joan from the Connecticut Farm Bureau. And she said, this happens all the time. This is wonderful news. This is great. So she walked us through the process on getting everybody together, and this is that first step. So we're throwing the pebble in the pond, and we're starting our first step to try to get feedback from farmers, landowners, 490 Act, farm landowners, people who might even just have horses and want to be able to teach lessons and so forth. But let's take a look at how we've changed over time. Right? Generations ago, there were so many more farms than there are now, maybe 60 or 70 just right in the area. We're down to a handful, right? The farming model has changed. This is next gen we're looking at, like a 2.0. So this is a chance that we have to get together and share our thoughts, come up with wish lists under the guidance of Joan to begin with. And let's see how that all pans out. Everybody's feedback from the survey has been fabulous. We didn't get everybody to complete it, obviously, but it's super important. So we're hoping that we'll have more feedback from that. What we'll do, after Joan speaks a little bit, will be to go through live on the survey to see some of the responses so you can hear from yourselves. You can hear a little bit about what some of the other respondents gave us feedback. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, it's hard not to see people smile. I can't tell you. I have done a lot of presentations. I'm assuming you're smiling, but I can't tell.
You also have 25 people in the Zoom.
Okay. Okay, Zoomers. So do we have any questions that are coming through, Jillian, on Zoom or chat? Okay. Excellent. Sounds good. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Happy to see that. Okay. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Joan Nichols from the Connecticut Farm Bureau, who is here with us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Harvey, for inviting me today. And it's great to see all of you this morning. So my name is Joan Nichols. I'm the Executive Director for Connecticut Farm Bureau Association. We are a private, nonprofit 501c5. We're based in Wethersfield, Connecticut. We just celebrated 101 years in the state of Connecticut. There are 51 farm bureaus in the United States. There's actually one in Puerto Rico, and all of us operate under American Farm Bureau Federation down in Washington, D.C., which represents about 6 million ranches and farm families across the United States. Here in Connecticut, we represent about 3,000 farm families in Connecticut. So what Connecticut Farm Bureau does is we do a number of things. We are a lobbying and advocacy organization, so I am a registered lobbyist. We also have a lobbying team that we work with under contract, and we advocate for the interests of farmers in Hartford, also on the federal level, and then also on the local level, the work that I do, which is how Amy and Harvey came into the Farm Bureau office, so to speak, is I also provide one-on-one assistance to our Farm Bureau members for anything they need on their farm. And we also recognize, and that's why we're here today, that while we can do an awful lot of work in Hartford, we can do a lot of work in Washington to support farmers. In Connecticut, a lot of what happens and what helps with farm profitability and sustainability is what happens at the local level. And I believe that's why we're here today. So some of the trends, I'm just going to go over the trends, and then I really want to get to the sort of the meat of today's meeting. So in 2017, the University of Connecticut updated the economic impact of Connecticut agriculture. It's a $4.2 billion industry in the state of Connecticut, supports over 21,000 jobs. What's very interesting is that the last USDA Ag Census has started to break out other farm income other than just commodities and crop production. So USDA has recognized that income coming in from added value, products and processing, income coming in from agritourism. So the last ag census was the first time that the ag census actually looked at income coming in from agritourism from across the United States. And University of Connecticut pulled those numbers out for Connecticut. And in Connecticut, $16 million was generated from agritourism in the state of Connecticut. So what we're talking about today, bringing people onto the farm, educational programs, farm to table, on-farm retail, farm added value processing, all of the things that we're seeing as trends in agriculture is being recognized on the national level, it's being recognized on the state level, and it has very positive economic impact to the state of Connecticut and your communities. So what we're seeing in trends is some industries like dairy and our egg and poultry industry, we're seeing a lot of consolidation. We don't see 500 dairy farms, unfortunately, in the state of Connecticut. We're down to less than 100 dairy farms in the state of Connecticut, and I know we have some dairy farmers here. However, we're still producing the same amount of milk and we still have the same number of cows. So there's consolidation there, same thing in the egg and poultry industry in Connecticut. But what we're also seeing is more trends on on-farm retail, smaller farms doing really, really cool, innovative food processing. There's going to be a much larger trend towards indoor agriculture, and we were just talking to some mushroom producers here that realize that if you can produce food in a controlled environment, and they do a lot of this in the Netherlands and other parts of the world. First of all, you extend your growing season, right? This is New England. We can't do very much in the winter time here, but if you do it in a controlled environment, you could start to grow 12 months out of the year, vertical integration. The other thing is we have a lot of smaller farms in Connecticut, and you can produce a lot of food indoors in a controlled environment on fairly small acreages. And we're also seeing more and more farms that want to bring people onto the farm, and they recognize that not only do they want to educate people about farming and farming practices, which is why we're here today, but that adds revenue to the farm, whether it's classes, whether it's on-farm retail, farm to table, farm tours, music events. That all helps buffer farms against that income that can ebb and flow with the growing season, but it helps bring some additional revenue onto the farm. So that's what we're seeing here today in Litchfield is a trend that's going on nationally. It's going on in New England. Vermont has done a tremendous amount of work in this area, but it's growing in Connecticut. So why are we talking about locally? So we have a myriad of state laws that help farmers. We have the state right to farm law. We have Public Act 490, which is your current use assessment law. We have state laws that provide tax reduction programs for you on your equipment and your personal property. But Connecticut is what, by the nature of our Constitution, is a home rule state, which means that while we have a myriad of state laws, a lot of what happens through your local commissions, whether it's your Wetlands Commission, your Planning and Zoning Commission, a lot happens locally. So agriculture often is regulated at the local level. And that's a very difficult concept for farmers to understand, because we all know any of us that are in the agricultural sector are fiercely independent. And we've been working our land for decades. And it's hard for us to wrap our heads around the fact that, why do I need regulations? And the other thing that's interesting when I do these presentations is I have farmers that say, I don't want more regulations. The less government, the better, whether it's the federal, whether it's a state, whether it's your local, like, stay off my farm, leave me alone, I'm good to go. you know, less interference, the better, right? However, what happens is when nobody's going to regulate you growing tomatoes, right? Nobody's going to regulate growing silage or forage for your livestock. But when we start to get livestock onto farms, okay, when we start to bring the general public onto the farm, where there's more activity being generated on the farm that maybe your neighbors are not used to, this is oftentimes when local regulations and planning and zoning gets involved. And the reason being is Connecticut, we are all, anybody that's farming in Connecticut, we are operating under a microscope, okay? Because our farms are intertwined with residential development, okay? And when you want to do activities on your farm, you're not going to move the farm into the commercial or industrial zone where maybe the restaurants are or the retail operations are. We're out in the country, okay? And so your farm is interacting with your neighbors. And that interface is why we're here today, because when people move in next to a farm or people live next to a farm, they love the landscape. They love the open space. I say people love the farms until the farmer starts to farm. Then there's some smell. Now there's some noise. Now there's a little bit of traffic. Oh my gosh, there's certainly going to be trucks, right? And people are like, whoa, wait a minute. I like looking at the field, but wait a minute. They want to put a new building up. I don't know if I like the look of that building, you know? So we have to address that because we're operating in a microscope. So what are other towns doing to address this? So I live in Eastern Connecticut, farming community. And a number of years ago, a program started up called the Advocate Program. And it was funded through the Department of Agriculture. A wonderful woman named Jennifer Kaufman did this. And in Eastern Connecticut, they started to meet with different towns in Eastern Connecticut to say, what can we do to help diversify your farms, address what you want to do that's not currently allowed in zoning? And so there's been a lot of work done in Eastern Connecticut. Almost every town in Eastern Connecticut now has either an ag commission or has an ag committee. That has sort of migrated west across the state. If you ask me how much work has been done in this part of the state, we're a little behind, okay? A lot of this work's been done already in Eastern Connecticut. So what are towns doing? They're looking at what we call ag-friendly zoning regulations. What can the town do to adopt regulations to allow the farms to do what they want to do and still be good neighbors to the non-farming community? So we work a lot at Farm Bureau on ag-friendly zoning regulations. Forming an ag commission, maybe that works in your town. That's a good way. Ag commissions are advisory in nature, just like your conservation commission, but it's a group of citizens, some engaged in farming, maybe some not, that can help advise your planning and zoning commission, your wetlands commission, when issues come up regarding agriculture. And then there are some tax reduction programs. And as soon as I talk about we can save you money, that could take on the rest of the program. So we could talk about that afterwards, or if people have questions about some of the municipal tax reduction programs that could be initiated. But when we get to the ag-friendly zoning regulations, the best thing that could happen is if the town adopts a set of zoning regulations that allows the farms to do what they want to do and allow the town to still have some control over that. But you're far better off with a really good set of zoning regulations than try to operate under the radar, because you can only operate under the radar so far until a neighbor doesn't like what you're doing, or you start to advertise what you're doing, and now we're all on the internet. So, you know, as soon as you say we're offering classes, come to our farm, or, you know, we're doing a mushroom class, come and learn about mushrooms, or come pick up mushrooms at the farm. As soon as you start doing that, it's out there. And you're better off with a good set of regulations that's going to allow you to do. So how do you do that? The first thing you do is we have a forum like this. Litchfield could be different than Goshen, could be different than Colchester, could be different than, Durham. Every town has its own little unique character. And so the best thing to do is first to have a forum like this, open it up to discussion. What do the farmers in your community want? And what is the makeup of your community? Because I live in Franklin, big farming community. We have the third largest egg producer in the United States has coops on my road, okay? So we're in a big farming community, and it's all very, very rural. But I can't say what's going to work in Franklin is going to work in Litchfield. So this is great. Find out what your farming community wants. Come up with your wish list, which we're going to talk about later on in this morning's program. And then I, at Farm Bureau, can help share what's already been adopted in other towns. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. This has been done in other parts of the state. We share those. It gives you a foundation to work off of. You sit down with your Planning and Zoning Commission. There's a process here, but the most important thing is to get feedback from you, the farmers, on what you want. And if Planning and Zoning is receptive to adopting a new set of zoning regulations, it becomes a very collaborative and productive way of doing it. The worst thing that could happen, and I just dealt with this in another community in southeastern Connecticut, is if everybody's operating in a silo, and no pun intended, because we're here talking about farming. If planning and zoning sits in a back room and starts to write regulations about what they think the farms want, and the farmers are here saying, this is what we want, ultimately you don't always end up at the same place. But if the farmers decide what you want, and then you could sit down with P and Z and say, we kind of started here. What do you think? What do you think is going to be palatable to your community? It's much more productive. I've sat in too many planning and zoning meetings, literally public hearings, where a town in a silo wrote regulations thinking they thought they knew what what the farmers wanted. And then we get to public hearing with 150 people in the room, and the farmers are like, that's not going to work. I mean, I went to one town, and they've had a meat processing facility in that town for forever. And the regulation said, well, the last thing you want is a meat processing facility. So whoever wrote the regulations didn't even know there was already one in town. So, you want to have that collaboration. The other thing that's very interesting is in Middlesex County. A few years ago, Connecticut Farm Bureau was instrumental in getting a law passed it's enabling legislation that allows for regional ag councils. And Middlesex County, Lower Connecticut River Valley, was the first part of the state to adopt a regional ag council. So there are now 17 or 19 towns that are represented by the Lower Connecticut Regional Agricultural Council. There are towns within the Lower Connecticut River Valley that have their own ag commissions. Durham does, I think it's Durham. There's a couple of other towns in that area. But the neat thing about the council is that every town sends a representative to the council. It's underneath the Lower Connecticut River Valley Council of Governments, and everybody sits around the table and says, oh, what's Deep River doing? Oh, look, Durham I just helped the town of Durham. They're in the process of passing the farm building tax exemption. And Durham says, oh, well, we're doing the farm building exemption. And another town says, within that Haddam says, wow, that's great. How did you do that? How does that working out? It's Connecticut. It's not, I lived in Montana. There's east and west of the Rockies, big state, right? Connecticut's small. What's going on here in Litchfield, 5 miles down the road in Goshen, it's not that, you should be collaborating within your region. And I know there's the Lower Connecticut, the River, Litchfield Farmers Hills group has done some great work in this area, but collaborating with other communities within your county or within your council of governments is also a really good way of doing this. So I don't know how much more time.
Helpful. Do you have much more to say on this? Because I think we're going to
No,
open up for questions
I
and go
thought
through.
maybe we'd open up to discussion or start to the
Okay.
next steps. And then it's most important to hear from you and to
Yeah.
hear from folks that are on the call and answer questions.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
There were a few things I realized that I wanted to make sure that we shared with you is that when we were in this process, we reached out to Denise Rapp, our first select person, and we told her what we were doing, and she said, "Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. I'm so glad you're doing that. You need to speak with somebody from the Litchfield Sustainable Committee." Did anybody raise of hands ever hear of that before? It's a new committee in Litchfield that is helping through Sustainable CT help Litchfield become as sustainable as possible. And there are different levels that you can work toward. And one of those earns 5 points towards a bronze level by holding a farmers forum. So she was excited. And she also said that she's so glad to know we're doing this because she's welcoming and the town is welcoming feedback. So this is just a wonderful handshake to walk into as opposed to a situation like you were just describing. So this is wonderful. Okay. Any questions from in here or online at this point? Because I think we can go through some surveys. Oh, okay. And I do have some bacterial wipes. So if somebody wants to say something, I have an extra microphone and I can walk over with it and I can hand it to you. So if you wanted to share or say something in the room, you can. As a quick reminder for Zoomers, you can raise your hand or send in a chat, and we'll just bear with us, with sound quality because we don't know how the delay might be with voice. Okay, are we able to pop into the survey for a minute? Almost. Sure, hang on just one sec. We're going to be as safe as possible. Okay. Okay, it should be on. Let me double check. Should be.
Okay, so Joan, I have a question for you.
Hang on just one sec. Is that? Try it again.
Okay. So my question, I know that there's a huge issue with the generational shift and farmers aging out of farming and young farmers not coming into this as much as they could be. Are you seeing anything in Connecticut to open up either like land leases to young farmers or programs that towns have sort of tried to start to bring younger farmers into the ability to do this, or is it just still kind of generationally passing the farm down to the people who inherit it, staying in the family essentially?
Yep. So that's a great question and a very timely question. So earlier this year, Working Lands Alliance, which is a project of American Farmland Trust, received some grant money from the Department of Agriculture. Myself and a whole group of people interested in this subject matter, including Connecticut NOFA and the New Connecticut Farmers Alliance, all sat around the table and recognized that land access is a big barrier to young and new farmers starting up in Connecticut. And part of that is just the capital investment to get into farming. And a big part of that is the cost of land in Connecticut. So if you didn't inherit land from your family, which some of our farmers have, we do have a number of farms that we do have multiple generations on the same farm, and we do have a young generation on that same farm willing to take the farm over. It's not going to look the same as it did as their grandfathers, but they're fortunate to inherit the property. That comes challenges as family dynamics that get into all of that as you get more and more generations on the farm. Not everybody thinks the same way, and not everybody wants part of the farm. So those are the people that they have their own challenges, but they already own the land. Those farmers that are coming into Connecticut, or the younger generation farm, land access is a big problem, and it's the cost of the land. Stay tuned, because the Connecticut Department of Agriculture is supposed to release the report that we all worked on this past year on what could be done to help with land access. Part of that is anytime we can protect a piece of property through either the Farmland Preservation Program or the Community Farms Program, or even through groups like Connecticut Farmland Trust, which I'm a board member on. If the bundle of rights has been sold off that property, when it goes onto the marketplace, generally, hopefully that land would be a little bit more affordable because the bundle of rights has been sold off of it. But it's an ongoing issue on the cost of land. There is the Farm Link program, which links people looking to get onto a piece of farmland with farmers that have land that they want to have farmed. And that's a great resource. And then there's another nonprofit called Land for Good, and Will O'Meara is the Connecticut representative, and they work exclusively on helping farmers get onto a piece of land, and they have a great, very robust website that has a lot of leasing information on it. But incubator farms, all of that is important. And I think honestly, what Harvey's trying to do on his farm is great too, because it's not only getting the land, but then learning how to farm and having a business plan and all of that, so that what I like to say, you're being set up for success. So again, forums like this, like, what are the challenges for you if you're trying to get into farming? And what can we do to, we at Farm Bureau, I provide that one-on-one assistance for people, and I can, eliminate a lot of those roadblocks that a lot of people run into when they first start farming. I can't tell you how to farm or what type of farming you should be doing, but I can show you where people have had the hiccups and we learn from those experiences, and I can share those with you. But beyond that, there's resources in the state, but it's a challenge.
Thank you. Did you have any other questions about that? Okay.
But again, why we're here is if the farms are not profitable and they can't diversify, and diversification is key to being successful in states like Connecticut and other southern New England, actually most of New England, where we're not a big commodity state like the Midwest. That diversification and profitability is what Farm Bureau is all about and what we focus on. So you, the farmers, we're grassroots. You, the farmers, tell Connecticut Farm Bureau, what do you need from us to make you profitable, to get you land access?
That's great.
You're welcome.
Wow. Okay. I know that a chat came through. I think it was about sustainable. Okay. There's a reason that no one has heard of Litchfield Sustainable Committee. We had our first meeting after the COVID crisis. Of course, we're all stuck in the middle of COVID, and we have yet to have an in-person public meeting. When we're able to do that, you will hear more about it. And let's just pause there for 1 second. This whole committee, I've had a chance to speak with a few of them, so has Harvey. Oh my goodness. I mean, what Litchfield is doing and what they're undertaking is no small task. There are like 2,000 light items that they need to accomplish, and I'm sure they're going to be looking for help on accomplishing these. Anything from holding a farmer's forum to possibly even, I mean, I know that other towns have been doing it, like no straws, no plastic bags, things like that. I mean, it's a big effort, and it's going to make a huge difference for generations to come. So keep an eye open for that. Okay, I'd like to give a shout out to CT NOFA and their beginning farmer and women farmer educational programming. Absolutely. We've also been working with CT NOFA and staying in contact with them. I mean, my goodness, we have such great resources in our backyard. So, and they are very familiar with different regulations from around the state that can help provide support. And maybe it's not too early to mention that the next meeting, which we're going to be talking more about toward the end, we're going to have the opportunity to bring in more partners, like CT NOFA, like Litchfield Sustainable Committee, the USDA, NRCS, Land for Good, anybody we can bring in who's willing to be a partner, because we have skin in the game, and so do they, even though they're not right in our specific town. Okay, so Jillian, may we go to the survey? Okay, excellent. So we had, oh my goodness, we had 2 new responses since I checked this morning at 5 a.m. 17 responses have come through. Thank you, everybody who's participated. And this was an anonymous opportunity, or a way you can share by putting your name stamp on some of your responses. We're not going to go through, by the way, and say, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that. We'll just look at some of the topics. We'll touch base on a few. I'm going to be able to share through email this whole recording. I will absolutely share the survey responses. I didn't pre-share them because we knew there'd be getting more, and I knew that after the meeting and word gets around that we'll even have more. And from that, Joan and I will be, well, I'm really passing it over to you. I am not the expert, by the way, not the expert, but Joan is. So, we'll be able to partner with you, and she'll help us with finding some regulations that work around those. And then we'll probably try to develop some sort of really solid feedback that would be helpful for the town as they're sitting down. Okay. All right. So so the numbers have changed, obviously. So about 23% of the people who participated are owners of the land. The survey went out to 490 Act farmland designation property owners, right? Because it was over 1,000 line items when we got the assessment for the 490, and we said, let's just start with sending the postcards to that batch and open it beyond there. And then we also knew some farmers that we individually were able to invite. And let's see, so we've got some small numbers related in, farming mushrooms. We've got some mushrooms over here. A regenerative farm educator, that's awesome. We've got some Chanticleer Acres employees. We definitely had some of the Chanticleer Acres employees give their feedback as well. So we've got people who are farming, who have skin in the game, but don't own the property, but they care about the regulations, right? Okay, let's go down a little bit further. This is interesting. So 26% of the property has been farmed, including prior owners, it looks like for 5 to 10 years. 13% are in the 50 to 75 category. That's amazing. Okay, and you'll be able to thumb through that. Let's get to some of the other bits. Look at our diversification of products and output. We've got vegetables, fruit, milk, eggs, pork, chicken, Christmas tree, greeneries. We've got sheep, goats, corn. One of the big surprises is to see eggs so long. But in additional input, we've got pasture for hay. We've got neighbors, wreaths, mushrooms, wreaths, and biological inoculants to rebuild soil. So that's interesting. Are you surprised to see such diversification, or did you expect that? Okay, let's keep going a little bit. So some of this is talking a little bit about where the products are sold. And it looks like most of the people and most of the farmers, about 50% combination of their sales is on their property, directly from their property, versus off-site, maybe, through a retail store. Okay. We'll keep going. Mostly everybody who participated was part of the 490 Act. We can go through the next 2 questions and just zip through. Keep on going. Okay, do you own farmland in another town? We've got some landowners, some participants who have property in Goshen and Torrington. Some own land and forest property out of state. And we've got others who have property in Bantam and Warren, which is great. Okay, this was interesting. Let's pause on this for a sec. If you were to describe Litchfield's the Litchfield's farming community's role in Litchfield County, what would you say? Everything was optional. Nobody had to answer anything if they didn't want to. But we've got selective entrepreneurial, supports tourism and quality of life, forlorn but hopeful, decreasing, unfortunately, a center of hub of agritourism and the direction setter for the area defining our farming culture. I'd like to help become the leaders in setting those trends. It's a vital food security source for the residents, vital to food security for residents. I mean, our farming community is vital for that. Nobody's going to disagree with that, I'm sure. The farming community is an irreplaceable part of Litchfield County that helps all traveling tourists understand why its residents are so fondly calling it home. So we're setting the scene of how beautiful it is here. We need farmers and sustainable goods. It sounds like we're looking for balance. You know, some people say they think, one person's feedback saying it's fragile and weak, and maybe we are fragile. In my personal opinion, we're only about one generation away from losing what we've got. I'm in a situation, we've got a farm in Watertown. It's a generational farm, you know, I'm second generation, and when my dad passes, it's going to us in 3 different parcels. We better get on that and figure out how to keep it together. We're worried about it, you know, about losing it. Smaller and less cohesive than some other larger ones, and help support the community's need for food security and healthy options. That's exactly what I think we're all about. Let's go ahead, and this is everyone's feedback. By and large, 56% of the people do believe that the farms generate a positive economic impact, as well as enhance the visual and cultural appeal of our community. Okay, we've got some elaborate responses. We'll let people read into those more later. Let's keep going and get to the point of where we got some wishes. We can keep going. Everyone will have a chance to read this as well. Okay, we can keep going. This is about the next section here is farm goals and current future. So let's talk a little bit about some of our current goals, and you guys can all have a chance to chime in as well. Do you have any feedback yet so far? Okay. Do we have another? Okay. All right, so what are your current goals? We've got people having goals of being supportive. They want to keep continuing. They would like to be more effective with their use of the land to support our food supply. This is just critical. You must see this all the time. Do you have a comment on anything that we've been talking about so far? Does it seem typical? Or?
It's very typical. And I have to say that the focus on the local food supply, especially this last 12 months, has really gotten acute. And any of the farms that were doing direct consumer retail just had a banner year this year. I mean, so many people were frequenting the retail establishments on the farms that I think the consumers were really acutely aware that they need to have a local food supply. They don't like to see the grocery store shelves empty. That's very disconcerting. And most of our food comes, if you go to any of the larger supermarkets, your food's traveling 2,000 miles to get there.
That's significant. We've all seen a bit of a bump there as well. Okay, do you want to just pop back to where we were? Some people just want to be able to maintain their current activities. They want to be able to create an experience, doubling growing space from last year, improving soil, supplying more vegetables and eggs to our local community restaurants and food hub. You know, growing as much of my own produce as possible, and when it's not possible, buy from local farmers. We're definitely seeing that trend for sure. tending to my hay and horse pastures and maintaining fencing. That's some goals that some of these people currently have. Continuing to encourage and support farming activities in our area. To foster group of farmers to serve their communities together, as well as to foster a sense of independence and strength between the community and farmers, a self-sustaining group of people who provide for each other, where everyone contributes and that they can, everyone contributes what they can and receives what they need. And then to be able to pass it on to another farmer. I know we've talked with other farmers nearby about saying, what are you going to do with your land? What's going to happen next? Do you have a plan? Do you have partners that will help you, take over your knowledge? I mean, is this something that the regulations is something that we can consider? I don't know how that even builds in, but any feedback on that? Let's just take a look at some of our hopes and wishes, and then we can open up as we read them, just like a couple at a time, have you speak about it. Two of the wishes are to be sustainable and to provide education. What are your thoughts on that related to the wishes and goals for these farmers?
Well, the education is very critical, and there's farmers that are looking to learn amongst themselves. Everybody has different practices that they want to share, and then I think when you bring the community, when you bring the general public onto the farm, there's a renewed appreciation of what it takes to grow food. People don't know how hard it is to grow food and do it well, and make money doing it. So when you bring the general public onto the farm, there's that renewed interest and that renewed appreciation for where their food's coming from and what it takes to grow food. And so that's critically important. And then the sustainability, and sustainability is a great term, but it's multiple layers. It's your soils, it's all about the soil, right? Mm-hmm. So you as farmers know that you've got to keep your soils healthy, you've got to keep your farms healthy. Your water has to be a good, healthy, your natural resources on your farm have to be healthy, but then your business model has to be sustainable. And I think, again, that's why we're here today. If you can't make money on your farms, if the next generation of farms can't be profitable, if we don't have the regulatory and economic factors in place, both locally and on the state level, farms are not going to be able to be profitable. They're not going to be able to expand. They're not going to be able to respond to the marketplace. And so that's, again, I think why we're here today is you need all of those factors in place for the next generation to say, yeah, I want to be here. And it's not just the next generation. The big egg producer that we have right now in Connecticut, they've got 3 phases of expansion, each one $110 million. They've just finished the first phase. And what they're saying to the state of Connecticut, are you going to support us here in the state before we spend another $110 million? Now, I don't know how many of you are looking at spending $110 million, but whether you're the big egg producer that wants to take advantage of new technologies and new ways of processing and packing your eggs and raising your chickens and your layers, or whether you're the other farms here in Litchfield, does your town, is the state of Connecticut willing to invest in you and give you the tools you need? And that's a big part of sustainability.
Wow. That's great. Thank you. I saw some chats were coming through. I just want to make sure we read them. And just, you guys holler, stop me if you want to talk. Raise your hand. Okay, yes. Oh, wait, hang on just one second. I'm actually going to give you this, and then we're going to go to, roll over here. Okay. If you pause on your question, actually, for a sec, I'll look at the chat, and then we'll let you ask your question, okay? Thanks. Okay, let's go to the chat. Okay, thank you, Joan, for your NRCS song. And Farmers Table Farmers Forum research. So this looks like some findings that say a very significant cost of land at 25%, availability of suitable land is at 18%, interest in the regional food hub is 85%. Wow. Do you guys understand what a regional food hub is? Do you want me to explain it? Okay. Actually, what I can probably do is can we try to bring in Renee if she's able to call in to talk about that for a second?
Absolutely.
Okay. Renee or Bill, if you guys are able to raise your hand if you're interested in being able to chat, we want to hear directly from you a little bit more about the regional food hub. I think Bill may have posted something.
Can you hear?
I think that may have been from Bill. Go to the see who.
Can you hear?
That chat. Do you want to try to bring back the chat?
I guess you don't have any audio, huh?
I can hear you.
Audio, huh?
He's coming through on the Zoom.
I was just going to give a definition of the food hub, if you like. Simply, it's a regional food hub is a business or organization that actively manages the aggregation, distribution, processing, and/or marketing of source-identified food products, primarily from local and regional producers, to strengthen their ability to satisfy wholesale, retail, and institutional demand. That's a USDA definition.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Thank you. I couldn't have said it like that. Okay, so before we kind of go through some more of those wishes and goals, did you have a question you wanted to add from the audience, and speak your name too, please?
Okay, my name is Linda. My question is, what is the percentage of organic farmers versus non-organic farmers in Connecticut? What are the differences in regulation and education for organic farmers, and what is the public demand for organic versus non-organic produce?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that. Yes,
Yeah,
please.
I wasn't prepared to answer that question, so I don't have the statistics in front of me. Maybe somebody else in this room does. And then when we start to talk about organic, and maybe Harvey can speak to this. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but then we have to talk about there's farming using organic practices, and then there's also USDA certified organic. So not everybody that's growing organic is necessarily certified organic. So I don't know I don't have the statistics on that, but any of the questions that I don't have the answers for, if you send me an email, I'm happy to follow up with you.
Great. Just 1 second. Let's get you the microphone. Sorry. That way the Zoomers can hear you.
So I think one of the things that's important in that distinction is the whole aspect of your local farmers. A lot of them don't have the money or they don't have the time or resource to certify themselves organic. But being a local farmer, obviously, you want to have a close connection to your customers, so your customers can have that trust in your product and know that you're employing these practices to provide safe, highly nutritious food. So I tend to, before I was working here in Litchfield, I was a market manager for a farmer's market. And it was interesting, you could talk with your farmers and find out what their practices were and actually just see the quality of the produce they were bringing to market. And I almost consistently supported one farm above all the others just because, he's like, I don't care about that whole organic certification thing, crusty old guy. But beautiful, beautiful produce. And he's like, I don't put any chemicals on them. Don't worry about that. But it really, it's a great question.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other questions from the audience or online at this time from Bill? The CT Department of Agriculture through viability grants has awarded approximately $150,000 in support of the Litchfield Hills Farmers Market and the Northwest Connecticut Regional Food Hub. So the the Litchfield Hills Farmers Market is, looks like it's really booming and is a much more regional level of what we see going on here. And what else? What was the other part? And with the Regional Food Hub, we do participate as growers with the Regional Food Hub. Does anybody else do that here in the room? Raise your hand. Do you too? Okay, anybody else online? Raise your hand if you participate with the Food Hub. If you don't, it's definitely worth reaching out. I mean, some of the food ends up in restaurants and SNAP programs. And, it's well worth the investment. Okay. If we can, let's just go back to some more of those wishes. We'll share them. So we want to be able to provide educational workshops and seminars to our community on topics related to agriculture, regenerative farming practices, nutrition, biology, botany, and healthy lifestyles via multisensory hands-on learning experiences to all ages in order to enhance the appreciation of the ecology of our area with sustainable practices. We want to be able to conduct agricultural related educational farm-based recreational activities. And then the next one is the farming grows and that commercialization decreases. So if we're looking at two of these combined, let's just first separate actually. We've got the educational component, which we talked about. It sounds like there's full support in the background to be able to help with the educational component of that. Harvey, you have a question or like to speak? Yep. Just one sec. I am not a Vanna White by any means.
Howdy. So I just wanted to say that when you come out of At the Corner restaurant, there's a sign that says Goshen, Torrington, and New Milford. And it shows the three different towns, how close they are to us. All three of these towns have adopted this. This is just from their regulations. So the regulations are really important. There's regulations that the three surrounding towns, but our town doesn't have. It's conducting agricultural-related educational, farm-based recreational activities, including agrotourism, providing activities related to marketing the agricultural output or services of the farm and local produce. On top of that, it also brings families and people involved in nutrition and health. It gets families working together. The kind of education we can do is we can bring in experts. There's new knowledge, there's old knowledge, and being able to bring the experts in, the people who have the old knowledge as well as the new knowledge together for people to consume it. And it just seems it's a high tide raises all ships. So it seems like it's not a bad thing to be able to bring people together and learn what our grandparents used to know, which was how to grow their own food, but then add the new things that, geez, there's more carbon in the atmosphere. We can actually make a difference. Backyard farmers can make a difference in carbon capturing as well.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Let's go back to the farms increasing and commercialization decreasing. I think there's also that raise hand function if you wanted to raise your hand at any time. Demonstrating the ability for people to get into farming on a human scale and being more and more profitable each year. I think that's one of the themes that whenever I talked with you about, it isn't just about the diversification, but it's about making it profitable. I mean, there's so many people, Joan, that I know are interested in farming, but they think they would never get into farming because they feel as though they can't make a living doing it. Do you have any feedback on that?
Farming's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have to tell you folks that if you're farming, it's hard. It's really hard. And it's expensive. And the first thing that we always say, and I don't want to get into the nature of how to start farming, but I like to quote Joe Bonelli. Joe Bonelli is a ag economics instructor at the University of Connecticut, and he's also at UConn Extension. And incidentally, Joe will help, as part of his role in Extension, help you develop a business plan. But we like to say, and I say this to new farmers all the time, it's a heck of a lot easier and cheaper to figure it out on a piece of paper than it is out in the field. So you have to crunch the numbers. You have to crunch the numbers. You have to have a business plan. You have to look at be realistic about your expenses and figure out how your income. We hear this happened with hemp. You know, everybody has heard about hemp, right? So, you know, hemp is supposed to be the be all and end all to help Connecticut farms. It's great, except that we had a lot of growers that got their licenses and grew hemp, and then there was no market, you know, or the market was flooded. So they put all this money into it, and the income was not nearly what they expected. Not to mention it's a new crop in Connecticut, so there's all those challenges of harvesting it, drying it, processing it. And we just don't have the processing facilities right now in Connecticut. We'll get them, but, you know, that's the type of thing where, you know, you figure it out on paper first. And one of the interesting things is that I see is people want to get into farming, and they send me, you know, a draft business plan, and they go, well, what do you think about this? And I say, great, except that you work full time and you're expecting your first baby, and, you know, your husband is a doctor in the ER. So this is great, but who's going to do all this work? Like, are you going to hire people? If you're going to hire people, anybody that has employees, you know what that's like, you know, following all of the labor laws and, you know, expense of coming with labor. So, you know, it's hard. Figure it out on paper. Labor costs are high. Land cost is high. And the challenge with farming in Connecticut and a lot of southern New England is what we call our input costs, you know, what it takes to bring into the farm to be able to farm and then turn a profit. We have high input costs. So, yeah.
That's making me think of hobby farmers, you know, like how many of us are hobby farmers? You know, we don't rely on it to make a living, but it's probably a very large scale of people who don't fully rely on it to make a living, but that's maybe something that can change. Okay, do we have some feedback here? Yay, Bill. Okay, from awareness to collective impact, do we know that the Northwest Connecticut Regional Food Hub is one of the 5 strategic priorities for investment for the Northwest Hills Economic Development Corporation? Question mark?
I didn't know that. But that's great.
That is great.
It's
that
great.
is great. Yes.
It's super.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
Well, would you like me to say another one or two things about that?
Just pop back in.
I'm ready to share that if you'd like.
Yes, please.
I'd just like to build on that. I mean, it's interesting how long it takes to generate awareness, but, you know, we've been at this as a philanthropic educational services public charity since 2006, and have received lots of support. The Food Hub is one of our programs, as is the Farmers Table, as is the Farmers Market, and other initiatives over that time. But if you look at the strategic priorities of Northwest, thinking about regionally, of the Northwest Hills Council of Government, out of the 5 top strategies that are getting funding support from the Council of Government, from the Federal Economic Development Agency, one of them simply states supporting the region's farmers through the Northwest Connecticut Regional Food Hub. But look at a couple of the others. of the strategic priorities directly relate. One of them states, fostering rural innovation and entrepreneurship in the region through a new regional rural lab. That's one that's been very focused on. The other one is attracting young workers to fill available jobs and visitors to the region through tourism, arts, and culture. And that obviously is part of agritourism. So what we're talking about today is certainly has the attention of lots of people, and many organizations are supporting this to the tune of almost $100,000 a year, including this year in 2020. We've received grants for the Food Hub and related programs of $100,000, and that's been running about at that rate for the last 3 or 4 years. So I would just button this up by saying young farmers working for collective impact is what we're trying to get done. Renee Giroux, our general manager for the Food Hub, is working with over 20 farmers today to get this started, supporting schools, delivering to retail, but it's just a drop in the pond. Getting to scale is what it's all about, and working together around these kinds of initiatives, what it's all about. Working individually, education is critical. And I'll get off this by just saying the regulations that make it difficult or a barrier, perceptibly at least, to have educational services foundations provide educational support on farms, that's a problem. That's a challenge. The other one that's really a headliner is, how are you going to get young people on the land if they don't have a place to live? The regulations in Litchfield restrict accessory dwellings in a way with people who have lots of land. It restricts them to the rear of the property, which makes no sense. So there are regulational barriers right in front of us to accessing land, leasing land, over and out. Just wanted to share.
No, don't go away yet. Would you mind just introducing yourself and who you are in relation to the Food Hub and sustainable communities?
Well, we founded the Food Hub in 2006 and went through all the barriers of that. It was not an easy road, and have worked at it for the last 14 years. So in the end, it's been fun. The organization now is Sustainable Healthy Communities. It's focused on one thing: helping farmers get to where they want to be. Very simply, it's connecting sustainable agriculture and local food and active, healthy lifestyles. So we've been an educational services public charity since 2008, which has enabled us to get a lot of the funding. Howard Rosenfeld, who's listening in, has been on our board, and he is one of the key players on Farmers Table, which has done a lot of the farmers forums in the past. So we're very active out there, and hope to be an umbrella organization in support of all of these kinds of initiatives. So the door is open to anyone who wants to relate in any way.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There's so much happening on a regional level that, there are a lot of opportunities out there to participate and to learn and so forth. So let us go back in, if we can, just make sure that we look at any more of these wishes to share in case it sparks on some discussion. And as a quick reminder, there are pastries over there, coffee down the hall, and the end on the right. Feel free to grab any if you'd like. So let's see. Demonstrating the ability for people to get into farming on a human scale and being more and more profitable each year. We talked about that. Less laws that come between farmers and consumers. this is what we're part of the reason we're here today. But I know my thought a little bit on that is that it isn't just about the laws, it's about the ability to work in harmony, like you were just saying, the farmers with the people with the farmers, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And somebody touched on the laws between the farmer and the consumer. The reality of the whole thing is if you're gonna farm, there's laws. And if it's not a local law, it's a state law. If it's not a state law, it's a federal law. And for instance, we just went through, and we're still in the throes of the Food Safety Modernization Act, which was a tremendous law that was passed to address safe food handling nationally. And we are still training farmers on the first part of that rule, which is the produce safety rule. Farmers look at that and they go, that is a very large law that impacts how we sell our consumable product. And we want to make sure that we're selling a safe food product. But if you hit a certain threshold of sales, the produce safety rule and the Food Safety Modernization Act comes into play. And for small farmers, that's a challenge, but it's a law. So yeah, there's a lot of laws. We can't avoid them.
Are those laws that you were just talking about regulations that people in the town or that the planning and zoning is governed under, so that like if somebody wanted to, make cottage cheese because they have the ability to do that in their kitchen, I don't know, is there some sort of regulation?
There's a lot of laws.
Yeah.
So what I was talking about is the Food Safety Modernization Act, it's just a federal law that was passed under the Obama administration. And then there's a produce safety rule. If you hit a certain threshold of sales, you have to comply with the produce safety rule. And basically it's all about safe food handling practices. So you're selling a safe consumable product. When we start getting into the added value processing, there's the cottage food law that was passed a few years ago. And then the Connecticut Farm Bureau through the Farm Foods and Jobs Bill a few years ago, we were instrumental in passing what's called the pickle bill. We called it the pickle bill, which was basically, it allows you to process certain types of acidified foods in a non-commercial kitchen. That's all federal and state law, but where your local regulations come into play is not so much in the animal husbandry end of it or how you're going to process your pickles. It's more what the town is going to allow you to do. Will they allow you to put in a commercial kitchen if you need it? Will they allow you to do on-farm retail? Will they allow you to repurpose a building to put in a processing facility? That's the type of thing that the local zoning is going to get involved in, as is your public health district.
Right, which is part of what's going to be in our next step is talking
Right.
about what do we want. So everyone who's listening in and here today, start thinking about, are these things that you are interested in? Because like Joan was saying, this is the time for the wish list. What is your wish? What really is your wish? Let's just pop in back through. Oh, another question, yay. Can someone explain what was meant by bleed from the townships? Is that getting at fees that the towns charge?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, let me try. Can someone explain what is meant by bleed from the townships? Is that getting at fees, at the fees that the towns charge?
Amy, can you hear me?
Oh, now I can hear you. Oh, no.
Okay, this is Katie. So it was in your, if you go back to the survey, one of the comments, this question is about, let me see here. Yeah, help them to earn excellent wages and stop the bleeding from town politicians. I'm sorry. So, and I was wondering what was meant by the bleeding from the town politicians. I was wondering, is that referring to fees that townships are charging? If somebody could explain. I was just interested in that comment.
Responded to that, but if somebody has an interpretation or they're able to chime in who said that, we'd love to hear more in this discussion about that, whether you're in person or online. Oh, and Katie, do you want to identify who you are?
Sure. Hi, I'm Katie Press. I work for NRCS here in Litchfield County in the Torrington office. And I am also a farmer, not currently in Connecticut, as people have identified. Farmland's very expensive, but I do still own my farm in Pennsylvania. And the picture behind me is of my farm and my sheep. And so I not only have a professional interest in all of this, but I have a very personal interest in farming too. And so that's who I am. And I'm going to go back on mute and turn my video off.
Thank you, Katie. I don't know if we'll be able to delve into that more, but perhaps when we go to our next steps and people have an opportunity to elaborate more, even on a survey again, perhaps, or in writing, then I'd be happy to share that with you or anyone else who's interested. Okay. Yes. Harvey would like to make sure that we do discuss this, and we will. We're going to talk about what happens with the next ripple in the pond, and this might actually help in the overall discussion here. So right now we're meeting together. We're coming up with our wish list. Pretty soon we're going to be rolling up our sleeves, and starting in January, we'll pick a date and a time when we can get together and have more of an opportunity to share and talk. And hopefully COVID won't be the same situation. We're going to get feedback from everybody so we know the best format to keep everybody engaged. But we're going to be bringing in NRCS, CT NOFA, and other entities and partners who can help us, sustainable CT, Litchfield, sustainable communities, Connecticut Farm Bureau. I'm sure I'm leaving some out and I don't mean to, but that's one step. And then if you wanted to touch base on the next bigger broad stroke, because there's a lot of momentum already underway with the Litchfield Hills Farmers Forum. Sorry about the confusion of the names. Keyword Hills, which is regional in nature. So that talking about the silos, like you were saying, of like, if I was in Thomaston trying to discuss regulations and come up with, the ability to be able to teach educational classes on my farm there, or in Watertown, didn't realize Litchfield's going through it too. It's a way of keeping each of those pillars and silos communicating with each other. And then that's one way to help move regulations along, but also to develop and create workshops based on specific issues that come up from the farming community, like how do I build a better social networking community? How do I, work with QuickBooks? How do I develop a stronger website? What is Twitter all about? How can I help my farm and things like that? I talked right through you. Did you want to say more about the different phases?
I think you're heading, the first part is I think at some point we need to hear from the people in the room here to see just what your thoughts are and what you want to do on your farms and what you currently allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do but want to do. I think bringing in, the next phase, the next part of the ripple, so to speak, is to tap into NRCS and NOFA and Litchfield Hills folks, and just so that you have a broader understanding of what's available for resources in your region and in the state. But then ultimately you want to kind of get to the drawing board, which is if the Litchfield Planning and Zoning Commission is receptive to looking at zoning regulations for farms that need to be amended and updated to allow you to do what you want to do in Litchfield, then ultimately that's where you want to end up. So, and at that point, I think as you come up with your wish list, I can share what other towns have done, as other, like Harvey mentioned, other towns, even within Litchfield County, have already done this. So the town of Litchfield doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. This is not something that hasn't happened already in the state. And then ultimately you sit down in a group or a subcommittee or somebody, you know, some entity gets together and says, let's draft some regulations, and then let's sit down with P&Z and share these ideas with them. And then you sort of, at some point, you have to get together with P&Z and, you know, come together on what the town's going to be amenable to adopting in their regulations. So that's when the devil's in the details.
Okay. I don't want to bore people going through the wishes that were online. Does anybody want me to still continue to read those? I just need a little bit of feedback from you guys with a thumbs up, thumbs down, time to talk. What would you like? Okay. And if you could say your name, that would be great. I've got a question here.
No. Vincent Crudell. Let's assume I want to buy a farm today. And this farm makes cheese, let's say. Am I grandfathering and continuing making cheese, or do I have to go through all the rules and regulations to do that? That's one question. I do have a second question.
So I just missed this first part of it. To do what on the farm?
Let's say they're making cheese, right? Now I buy this farm. Do I have to go through, and am I grandfathering? Let me put it that way. Am I grandfathering to continue making cheese, or do I have to go through the town and get an approval and see if I can do that, or they're going to stop me from continue doing that because it's new owner, and all of a sudden the old owner no longer owns the farm?
So this would be a question for your town, because if you're going to invest in that farm, you have to find out how it was previously permitted. Does the permit run with the land, or does the permit run with the owner? And then even if you were going to do some sort of processing, are you going to do it the same way that the previous owner did? Do you need to are you going to want a different processing facility? You know, if you have to deal with public health, there's probably a new set of licensing that's going to run with the producer versus the land. So the permitting part of it is you have to ask the town how they permitted it.
Okay, there's no ability to continue with the same permit. Let's say it's strictly for that farm. I have to get my own permits.
You would need to check. You would need to check with the farm, and this is when we start to get into the details, because as the new owner, if this gets into starting to get into the weeds, so to speak. If you want to come in and do processing, or you want to do agritourism on your farm, right? And it was done by the previous owner, and now you're the new owner. How does the town know that you're going to continue to farm, as opposed to just wanting to do activities or
and I agree.
processing?
Well, but the question is, can I go, let's say, town hall and says, okay, now I'm the new owner, I'm going to continue doing this, versus, it takes 6 months to get permits to do that.
This is where I try to eliminate the roadblocks for new and beginning farmers or people acquiring a new piece of farmland. Those are all, I have a whole grocery list. I have a whole program on what we do to help new and beginning farmers or people getting onto a new piece of property. All of those questions, what am I allowed or not allowed to do? How was it permitted before? Those are all questions that you should be asking the town that you're investing in that property before you make that investment, and always get it in writing.
And the second question is, and I don't know if those exist in Connecticut or not, but does the size of a farm dictates what you can and cannot do with it? So for instance, if you have 1,000 acres versus 10 acres, does it dictate what you can and cannot do?
Welcome to the world of local zoning regulations. And that's why we're here today. The state of Connecticut does not dictate minimum acreage for farms. Public Act 490, which is your farmland classification, within that statute, there is no minimum acreage. However, this is a component of agriculture that sometimes is regulated through local zoning. Again, nobody's going to regulate growing silage. Nobody's going to regulate generally growing vegetables. But if you want to have livestock on a farm, that oftentimes is regulated through minimum acreages, setbacks for manure, setbacks for the housing of livestock. That could be and often is regulated through local zoning. Again, getting back to on-farm retail, agritourism, that is all regulated through zoning. The state right, we have a state right to farm law, and people confuse that with I'm a farm, therefore I have the right to do this. The law was passed in 1981 under Governor O'Neill. That only addresses the 5 nuisances related to farming: noise, dust, odor, mild forms of water pollution, mild forms of pesticide overspray. Those are nuisances, and that comes under the jurisdiction of the Commissioner of Agriculture. Has nothing to do with local zoning.
Thank you for your question.
So before you invest in a farm, you join Connecticut Farm Bureau, and then you call me.
Okay, I'm getting another clean antibacterial wipe. If anybody has a question, I'm happy to pass this on. I know some stuff came through on chat. Thank you, chatters and Zoomers. Okay, this is, are there any regulations around glamping that one needs to be aware of?
Around what?
Glamping.
Glamping.
Yeah, glamping is.
Oh, I would assume that would be regulated through zoning.
Okay. We have a comment that might help address that. Or did we miss one before? Let's see. Yeah, let's make sure we haven't missed anybody here. Yeah. Okay, right here. You want me to read? Can you make that bigger by chance? There we go. Okay. Litchfield County Plan of Conservation and Development, under the auspices of the Northwest Hills Council of Governments, has 21 towns. The goal is to support farm businesses and protect farmland. Policies: number 1, protect farmland, support farmers, connect farms and local markets, cultivate agritourism, and ensure access to locally grown food. Number 2, to support agricultural innovation and attract a new generation of farmers to the region. Number 3, protect cultural and ecological values of farm fields and farmsteads. Tasks provided to promote farm-friendly zoning regulations and to provide farmers flexibility for ancillary uses on farms. Okay. Thank you for writing that in. This is from John Morisani to everybody. Not positive, but I think glamping on a residential zoned land would be commercial use and would require a special exception or a special exemption. Okay, so to answer the question about glamping regulations, we might have some clues there about a special exemption. Okay, thank you. Were there any other chats in there? Okay. I'll give everybody a chance to raise their hand or ask another question if they have it, and I just want to go back into that one other section there to make sure that any of the wishes are shared, because I know everybody's not going to run home and pop this open necessarily. Protect the farmer. They are a dying breed that our grandchildren will not be able to appreciate. Oh my goodness. That's a really good point. Help them earn excellent wages and stop bleeding from town politicians. Did I miss something from above? Farming that grows. I said that, less laws between farmers and consumers. That, okay. that the regional agricultural education programs encourage and create a new generation of regional farmers. It seems like there's a really strong trend toward this, so any regulations that can help that would be tremendous. If you have examples, I think that'll end up coming to the table eventually. Okay, and to grow a farm and have it be part of a network or a co-op, which becomes a community staple. I think that we're learning that having produce having to go 2,000 miles to get to the grocery store to then make it 10 miles back to your house is probably not the best. And co-ops are really, really a strong way to become a community staple by participating in them. And to have someone else do it here. Okay, so we want to have more farming in the area. Okay, any other thoughts, feedback? Please do welcome it. And Joan?
Sure. So one thing, and I wanted to just make a comment on what John Morisani submitted. So do all of you know what the Plan of Conservation and Development is? Do you know what that means? Okay, so the state of Connecticut has its own Plan of Conservation and Development for the state of Connecticut, but then each town through state statute is required to have their own Plan of Conservation Development. I forget how often it's supposed to be updated. I want to say every 10 years, but don't quote me on that. But your Plan of Conservation Development is what is the foundation for the economics and regulatory climate within your town. And the reason that I think it's important that John brought that up is if your Plan of Conservation and Development says ag-friendly zoning regulations, supporting farm businesses, all of the other bullet points that John made, go to your Plan of Conservation and Development, read it for the town of Litchfield, and then see if the zoning regulations actually meet the goals of the Plan of Conservation Development, because that's the foundation that drives zoning regulations and the future development of the town. So it sounds to me that and I think the reason John brought this up is that within your Litchfield Plan of Conservation Development, it identifies a lot of the things that we're talking about, but maybe, I'm just speculating here, that your P&Z regs have to kind of catch up with that. But it's good that it's identified in the POCD because the town recognizes that all of those components are desirable for your community. It's a planning tool.
Excellent. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, let's peek over and see if we have, so is this the latest one right here? Okay. It was Bill Burgess who brought it up, but I'm here to tell you that even when something is in the POCAD, the Plan of Conservation and Development, and planning and zonings, they don't always pay attention to it. So how can you address that if the P&Z is not really always paying attention to the Plan of Conservation and Development? I mean, what is the tool to make that happen?
Something like this.
Okay.
And seriously, whether it's, the POCD is sort of like almost like it's a planning tool, and it's a wish list. Generally the community will provide input into the POCD. It's not written again in a silo, but then, the town has a lot of juggling to do. There's a lot going on to run a town, and planning and zoning regulations aren't updated on a regular basis. And it really takes initiatives within the community, something like this, whether it's the farms or whether it's downtown, businesses that just say, what you allow us to do on Main Street doesn't really work for us. Those regulations were written in 1985, and maybe they need to be updated. So it's not just farms that look at the POCD, it's all other aspects. It's manufacturing, it's infrastructure, it's transportation. Anybody that has a vested interest in that is looking at the POCD to say, that's great, it's in the POCD, but does it allow my restaurant to really do what I want to do on Main Street? Or does it allow my farm to really do? And then it takes initiatives like this, citizens within the town to say, it's in the POCD, but maybe we really need to update our regs. And you know, rightfully so, P&Z's got a lot going on. So, you know, sometimes it just needs something like this, like a forum like this, or a situation like, you know, Harvey's or any of the other farms in town to say, oh, you know, here's a wake-up call. Here's in the POCD. That's great. Now let's just bring the pieces of the puzzle together.
Right. We don't regret for 1 minute the process of coming to where we are today. I mean, it takes a lot of work to bring people together in a forum like this and to try to figure out who's involved with what and how to make sure everybody's getting invited. But we could have just gone to planning and zoning and saying, it looks like we need to have X written in our planning and zoning regulations. But thanks to you, you said we really should get everybody together to get all feedback. So, you know, it's worth the effort that we're putting in. Stephen, did you have a question? Let me, so everyone can hear you on Zoom, otherwise they won't be able to. Thank you.
Maybe I'm not recalling this correctly, but I remember through that process, we did kind of learn that the town of Litchfield really hasn't budgeted appropriately for the planning portion of the P&Z committee. So for a number of years, there hasn't really been a whole lot of new work on creating planning regulations. It's sort of been more of just following the current ones. You know, that's certainly a holdup with new development in the town. And I think John was saying through the Zoom call, you know, putting this pressure on the P&Z committee and maybe political pressure, you know, can help them, you know, create a more actively, you know, managed planning and zoning committee in Litchfield here.
That's a good point. I know that the good news at the end of our planning and zoning hearing toward the end of denial was that, you know, that admittedly the funding needs to come from somewhere. It needs to become prioritized to review these regulations. And that's, to me, is great news. To everybody is great news because it's what brings us here today, because they are trying to make it a priority. But one way that we can save the town money is by presenting these ideas rather than having hours and hours and hours of a planner trying to do the research themselves, right? And hopefully it would be thorough. And not to say it wouldn't be, but this is more of a customized regulation process.
Give them a starting place.
Yeah, okay. Was there more feedback that came through? Okay, continuation of John Morisani's comment. Sorry, I didn't realize there was more beneath it. To me, the most important thing is that a group of local farmers can do this to provide some political pressure to the planning and zoning so that events like Harvey is trying to get permission to do, an educational event won't be necessary to get shot down because the P&Z is afraid of getting sued by a NIMBY local. And then Bill says, Bill Burgess says the Planning and Zoning Commission, I think it's regarding the Litchfield Planning and Conservation Development. The P&Z Commission should revise the P&Z regs to allow profitable use of underdeveloped land and for land-based businesses and related uses in environmentally responsible ways. John would like to say a word. Join us, please. Are you able to, are you called in?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Just making the case that, and in addition to what Harvey went through recently, we actually tried to get a zoning regulation change put through 2 years ago that would allow farmers to host wedding or public events on their property. I have to say, parenthetically, I'm actually glad we didn't get it because I probably would have invested money and not be able to do it in this pandemic time period, but what the hell. At some point we'll be out of this. But the kind of one of the problems that we have in the town is the Planning and Zoning Commission has a remarkably small budget for any legal matters. And when someone comes along, like they did in Harvey's case and threatens to tell the town that they're going to sue them, or in our case, represented a neighbor and told the town that they would be sued if they pass this it's remarkable. It's much easier. It's the path of least resistance for the zoning board is to say, oh, well, it's a nice idea, but gee, we can't do that. And what kind of has to happen, in my opinion, is we've got to get some fortitude in the town from the political process to say, yeah, these are the things we want to do. These are the things that will make it easier for farmers to make a living off their land, or these are the things that make it easier for farmers to learn about their land. And again, to reiterate what I said before, the most important thing about a group like this, if there were a group that were truly interested in supporting farmers in Litchfield, you know, every member on that P&Z board is voted in. And that's where your votes count.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate that.
Amy?
Do you have any comments, feedback to share on that, Joan?
Amy, are you there?
Okay, I don't know if your mic was on at that point. Okay, would you repeat that?
Oh, I was going to say, John's absolutely right. And that's part of the reason why if you have a good set of regulations, it makes life a lot easier on the farms. It makes it easier on the farm businesses, or actually any business in town. And it makes it easier on the Planning and Zoning Commission, because now you have a set of regulations that says, this is what's allowed in this zone. And then, yeah, certain activities are going to require maybe a one-time special permit, which gets more into the details of what's going to be allowed, but you're not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And the challenge with farms is that and agriculture in general, is it doesn't fit the cookie cutter mold that most land use planning and zoning likes to fit in, because it's farming and it changes. And what works this year may not work next year, will work great 5 years from now, but might look different, you know. So I have to appreciate that it's a challenge for P&Z to write regulations for farms, which again is why we're all here, because if we can help them understand what farms are all about and what they need. They're not experts. They don't know, most of them, unless they're farmers, which you should have some farmers on your Planning and Zoning Commission. That should be a takeaway. Get some farmers elected to P&Z, or any of your commissions for that matter. But, you know, if you can give them the foundation and have them understand, nothing's ever going to save you from being sued. You know, is that old adage, anybody can sue you, but it's a matter of, you know, do they really have a case or not? But, you know, if you can get it all done right the first time, you tend to eliminate it out of that. And I'll just give you an interesting takeaway. One of the things that we're asked by planning and zoning commissions is, after they've passed regulations to allow farms to do educational programs or on-farm retail or agritourism, after they've passed it, and after the farms start doing this, have there ever been any problems, like were they kicking themselves for letting the farms do this? And I can't think of an instance where it became a problem. The only time it's ever been a problem is when somebody doesn't follow the rules. So you're given a permit, you agree to the terms of the permit, and then you say, this is my get out of jail free card, and then you just do whatever you want. That's a problem, but you know, that's also kind of being a bad actor. But no, and if honestly, of the neighbors who tend to not be all that happy about what may or may not be allowed, if you ask them a year or so later, how many cars came and went on that farm on a particular day, they couldn't tell you. And I'm not saying they certainly have a right to be concerned about what goes on in their neighborhood and around their property, that they should have an input. We want to be good neighbors to the farmers. We want to be neighbors to our non-farming neighbors. But at the end of the day, most of the fear of the unknown a year or two down the road, if the farm does what they're supposed to do by permit, and they follow the rules and they're respectful of their neighbors, more often than not, the neighbors end up saying, I'm really glad that the farm was able to do that, because now at least it stays a farm. what they don't want is another house next to them.
Good point. Very good point. Thank you. I think that
You're
Bill
welcome.
has something he wanted to chime in and tack on to what the comments from John, and then we'll go back and we'll read these other comments. Bill?
Yeah, the comment I wanted to make was just the case history that when we came forward with a recommendation for the farmers market in the end of August of 2006, what we didn't do is walk in and say, we're just going to do it. What we walked in with was for the top people from the Connecticut Department of Agriculture. We walked in with people who had farmers markets in Westport, Connecticut. And in fact, it was I think it was to this date, the largest attendance at a planning and zoning or type of meeting. And it started out with economic development, where it was very clear that there was a groundswell of interest. And that was when the grant program just started, and we ended up with a $40,000 grant. But we didn't try to do it on our own. We went through the Economic Development Commission that relates to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we, for some reason, everybody showed up. And having that expertise from the state and from other towns that had successful farmers markets, that's what broke it down. There was certainly resistance to where we were located and that kind of thing. But because we were working through the town bodies and didn't become cowboys and try to kind of jam it through, we got it right the first time. And that was just good fortune that got us off to becoming a nonprofit. It all started back in that way. And that's just illustrative of what John Morsani was, I think, talking about.
Thank you very much, Bill. Okay. I think it looks like there may have been quite a few chats that came in. So is this where we left off? This might be from Catherine, Katie Proust or Catherine O'Neillia. I can't remember. There we go, from Katie. Okay, oftentimes the people who run for those positions do so because they want to stop something, not because they want to increase something. So farmers need to run to be on the P&Z. Agreed. So that was she was chiming in on your comment. Okay, thank you, Katie. This is from Cynthia Rabinowitz. Then we have the problem there here in Bethlehem that we still do not have any zoning. So I guess there's pros and cons, whether you have zoning or not. I've heard feedback. Did you want to make a comment on that at all about, I mean, doesn't super.
I mean, I think I don't know if Bethlehem is, there used to be 2 towns in Connecticut that still didn't have zoning. I don't know. You'd have to ask people in Bethlehem whether it works or doesn't work. I don't know.
Right. One thing I did notice is that there are a lot of farms in Bethlehem. There are a lot of farms in Bethlehem, no doubt, no doubt. Okay, any other comments or chats or raising of hands? Okay. I think raise hand is in. If you look at your own shot of yourself in that screen, I think there's a raise hand button or somewhere in the chat window. Okay. All right. So we have about 10 minutes now. And I think let's just take a few minutes to talk about, I mean, any questions about the next steps or clarity regarding the difference between doing something regional versus on this level, which is what we're focusing on with our group. Okay. So let's just write down a few things. We know that we're going to get together in January, right? One thing we learned is that not one time fits all. So not everybody was able to join. We're thinking about trying to do it in an evening, maybe like a 6 to 8, or what was the other time ideas that you had?
Evening is good, or Saturday morning.
Yeah, yeah.
And winter, because come the growing season, farmers are really busy.
Right. I think because of farmers market and there's still some CSAs, not everybody who wanted to attend was able to. We're definitely going to be sharing this Zoom with anybody who'd like it. But it sounds like, let's just write down some of the key takeaways One is profitability, it sounds like, and this wouldn't be just a takeaway for us from today, but will kind of help shape some of the topics that we're hopefully going to talk about when we get together in January. So profitability. And that would be related to regulations. You know, I don't know what that looks like from your perspective. Do you want to help guide me through some of the key takeaways as well?
I mean, I think ultimately what you're here for is you want to have a set of zoning regulations that's going to allow the farms to grow and allow you to do what you want to do within what the town is willing to, you know, agree to. I mean, ultimately, that's where you want to end up, at least for Litchfield anyway.
So it looks like some of the other topics that came up under wishes were really education, but that one I know for sure. And diversification. In other words, being able to do a little bit more than what they do right now. Anything else surface?
Yeah, I mean, this gentleman brought up your land access, so how you address land access in your town for new farmers that want to come in, and even for the younger farmers that are here. What opportunities can you provide to them?
Young farmers. Okay. What's the next comment? There's a lot of support for farming in Bethlehem, but there's a fear level for the types of intrusive businesses that could suddenly appear next to your residence. This is especially concerning with excessively noise-producing types. We have a lot of target shooting, monster truck track, heavy equipment storage, and that kind of thing that people don't like. It's definitely not a straight black and white issue. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Was there more here? Okay. I've got some feedback coming through through a different method. The only yes vote you got from the P&Z was the lone farmer on the commission. Oh, right, because we need to have more farmers. I think we do have the one farmer who had stood up, but maybe there's more background related to farming than we realize on the commission too. All right, anything else related to major topics? And we're going to be sending out, you know, entertainment, okay? And so the ability to hold events. Here, let me give you the microphone. Oh, okay, that was it. So entertainment. Okay. Harvey? Thank you.
We've been talking about the pros and cons of the pandemic. And John Morisani said, you know, he was happy that he didn't invest for outside entertainment, you know, for weddings and stuff. But at the same time, down at South Farms, going outside during a time, if you wanted to see a concert, if you wanted to do it, that's happening. We talked about numbers spiking up for people being involved in vegetables and food. So literally, it's the diversity of what you can do outdoors. I mean, we like to, you know, I heard that they're talking about bringing a boutique hotel into the center of Litchfield. Well, they're coming because of the country area. They want to be able to do country things. And having country educational things there only just increases, as we talked about before, nutrition, health, understanding of the importance of growing food. So I just think there's wisdom in that. We have to look at the diversity of all of this, especially at a time of pandemics.
Thank you, Harvey. Okay. All right, we've got a comment that came in from Bill. New regulations regarding accessory dwelling structures made in 2018, new limit / young farmers and access to land. So accessory dwelling structures and being limited, I suppose, plus young farmers access to land. So the young farmer, I did write in here, we're going to add access to land. And then accessory buildings.
And the housing issue is a huge obstacle
And housing.
to new farmers and young farmers, because oftentimes it's not only the cost of the land, but the cost of the house.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and then a lot of towns don't allow, unless they're already there, they don't allow, a secondary residence
on one lot.
on one lot. So
Yeah.
that's a problem if you have multiple generations of family members on the same farm. They want, especially if you have livestock, but most farmers want to live on the farm. They don't want to have to keep driving back and forth. So the housing issue is always a problem.
Okay, right, thank you. I ended up having to get a second dwelling on one lot, and we were able to only do it because there was on a farm in Watertown. Okay, Bill, yes, if you want to elaborate, that would be great. Love to hear from you on that.
No, I just want to clarify. Joan, this is a big issue in Litchfield. You have people who are Act 490 who have lots of land. Perhaps they might want to encourage or support a young farmer having access to that land for farming. The new regs that were just put in 2018 that surprised everyone, including civil engineers, all the realty people, restricts where you can place those accessory buildings, which severely limits the ability to do it. They basically say now you have to put accessory dwellings behind your existing structure. Well, there's lots of people who have tremendous frontage where you could have a separate entrance and accessory dwellings to support farming. What about older farms, older farming families that need to get younger people to come onto the land for transition? Well, right now, the zoning regulations put in 2018, nobody knew about it, basically now limit what you can do. That's wrong. And I can tell you that the real estate people in town are very upset, and the civil engineers who do all the land work, they were surprised. They didn't even know about it. So that's the kind of thing that you have to watch.
Thank you, Bill. Did you have any comments on that?
Yeah, and then sometimes the way that they build out regulations like that, where they force you to put the house, if you were to able to get another house, ends up where it's going to take land out of production. Whereas if you could put it somewhere else on the property along the frontage or something, most farmers don't want to lose land, productive farmland. By the nature of zoning, forces them to put structures where they don't really want to put them. And then the other thing, and this is really getting into the weeds, sometimes there's other problems with zoning regulations where they even won't let you put an agricultural structure up unless it's accessory to a primary structure, which is the residence. So sometimes you have a piece of farmland, there's no house on it, you don't want to put a house on it, you don't need a house on it, but you want to put a hay storage facility or something like that. And the town says, well, you can't put a hay barn up because there's no house on the property. Yeah, but it's 80 acres of hay fields, and I'd like to be able to store the hay so I don't have to keep transporting it to the main farm. So those are some of the nuances you run into also.
Excellent, thank you. I know we're just on the final moments here. I wanted to see if there any other things just came through. We're good? Okay. Here's one. Country air might also include the smell of spread manure, and that needs to be okay. I think that's part of our farm right to farm.
That's part of the right to farm law.
Yeah, Katie, I agree. I'm glad that we have that, but I think a lot of neighbors who are moving in aren't really so sure that they're going to be liking, the way the manure smells. They love the way it looks until they smell it. But it's part of the beauty of living where we live today. So there are a lot of opportunities to get involved, not just on this forum as we move ahead, but also regionally with the Litchfield Hills Farmers Forum. If you have any questions about that, we can certainly answer questions. Bill, did you have anything else to say about what are the next steps with the Hills Forum, which is the regional the regional forum as opposed to our little local one in Litchfield?
We're
Bill, Renee,
100%, we are 100% focused on building out, supporting, and getting to scale on the Northwest Connecticut Regional Food Hub. I mean, that is tied into everything that we've done. It leads up to this point is what farmers want, and it provides a focal point for collectively coming together to access retail, wholesale channels. That's what it's all about if we're going to grow out our farms. So we're 100% target focused on that. That's where all of our funding goes, while we maintain the farmers market. And on a year-round basis, it's now in session over at the community center. And the farmers table has been, supplanted by COVID. So we were not able to do that, but that's a major fundraiser where we provide we provide funding to farmers to bridge the gap in pricing from what they need to be profitable and what people are willing to pay. So that's the major fundraiser that we hope to pick back up on once we're in the new normal.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bill. All right, guys, thank you. I hope nobody fell asleep. This has been really great. I just have enjoyed getting everybody's feedback. Just hearing from all of you and from everybody zooming in, it looks like there is a lot of momentum that's already built. If you are not on our emailing list, please email Litchfield CT. I'll write it up here. Well, my writing is terrible. Litchfield CT Farmers Forum at gmail.com, or ask somebody how you can get in touch. We'll get you on the list so that we can keep you in the loop when the next meeting is going to be. And we're going to try to get people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and sit at the kitchen table per se and kind of hammer some of these out. And we'll extend an olive branch to the town who's willing to accept it, which we're fortunate for. Oh, comment from Renee. One of the other big issues the food hub addresses is food security. That is something that we can't underestimate ever at all, 100%. Thank you, Renee. Thanks. I'm sorry? Food security, well, you can actually talk more on that, but the food security to help make sure we have more local, regional ability to sustain food production to people rather than having shortages and not being able to have healthy, nutritious food nearby. Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Join us for some food and some coffee and chat for a little bit. Thanks.